3 million pages of evidence, thousands of unsealed flight logs, millions of data points, names, themes, and timelines connected. You are listening to the Epstein Files, the world's first AI-native investigation into the case that traditional journalism simply could not handle.
Welcome back to the Epstein Files.
It's good to be here.
So today's topic, it's a big one. Maybe the biggest.
It's the name that everyone always asks about.
Bill Clinton. His name is all over the files. It's in the flight logs. There are notes about the Clinton Foundation. And for, more than a decade now, his name has been at the very center of the storm of rumors surrounding Jeffrey Epstein.
It really has. I mean, it represents this intersection of, the absolute peak of political power and this incredibly sordid, dark criminal enterprise.
Whispers of island visits, secret dinners, all this stuff has been swirling for years. But today, we're going to try and strip away all that noise. We're going to look at the hard data.
We're going to look at what's actually in black and white. What do the flight manifests say? The internal emails, the sworn depositions, that's our focus.
Exactly. So, for everyone listening, here's the roadmap. We are going to cover the specific flight log entries, especially that famous Africa trip. We're going to dig into the internal communications about the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative.
And then we have to talk about the island. We'll analyze the deposition testimony, specifically from Ghislaine Maxwell, about whether Clinton ever visited Little St. James.
And finally, and this is maybe the most important part, we're going to draw that critical distinction between what is documented fact versus the wild allegations that have fueled, these massive political firestorms.
It's a story about access, about leverage, and really about how a criminal enterprise managed to attach itself to the highest office in the land.
So let's dive in. And I think we have to start with the most concrete physical evidence we have.
The aircraft.
The aircraft. The famous or infamous Lolita Express.
Although, in the files, they rarely call it that. It's usually just referred to by its tail number or, simply the plane. It's very bureaucratic.
Right. And for years, the headline you always see is Clinton flew on Epstein's plane. That's the baseline fact. But we have the actual logs, the emails discussing those logs. So let's unpack what that really means.
Yeah, because we're not just talking about him hitching a ride from New York to D.C. or something.
No. We are talking about the Africa trip.
This is the centerpiece of their public relationship, for sure. It's September 2002. Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a whole entourage take this multi-day humanitarian tour of Africa. This wasn't a quick op. This was a whole campaign.
And the files, they give us this incredible glimpse into who was actually on board. I mean, it wasn't just the three of them sitting there in silence.
No, not at all. The manifest and the related documents, they list a few other pretty notable names.
The one that jumps out immediately is the actor Kevin Spacey.
Yep, Kevin Spacey.
Okay, can we just pause on that for a second? I mean, just sit with that image.
Right.
You have, on one airplane, Bill Clinton, the former leader of the free world.
Right.
You have Jeffrey Epstein, who we now know is running a massive international sex trafficking ring.
His partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, is there.
And Kevin Spacey.
And the comedian Chris Tucker's name also appears in the logs for that trip.
It's like the setup for a very, very dark, surreal joke. But looking back at it now, from our perspective, it just adds this whole other layer of, retrospective cringe, doesn't it?
It's a roster of future scandals, all strapped into leather seats at 30,000 feet. It really creates a specific tableau of that era.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, you have to remember, this was the early 2000s. It was this post-9/11 world where celebrity and politics were merging in this new way. Epstein was positioning himself as a philanthropist.
Yeah.
He was literally buying his way into credibility.
And having Clinton on his plane was the ultimate credibility chip.
The ultimate. And the documents, they include this really specific, almost bizarre little anecdote from this trip that I think helps you understand the dynamic. It humanizes it in a weird way.
Are you talking about the Delhi story?
I am talking about the Delhi story, yes.
Yeah.
There's a document description. It looks like notes for a book or maybe an article proposal they found in the files.
Yeah.
And it mentions a stop they made. It says the group landed and went to a nearby Delhi.
At Delhi, in the middle of this Africa tour.
The exact location isn't specified in that snippet, but the context is the Africa trip. So, it could have been a shop in Ghana or Nigeria or Rwanda somewhere. They stopped to refuel or visit a project. And the note says that Clinton regaled the group.
Regaled. That is such a specific and I think telling word. It paints a picture, doesn't it? Clinton is holding court. He's the center of attention. He's telling stories, charming everyone.
And think about the setting. They're just in a deli, maybe eating sandwiches, I don't know. But it suggests this social comfort. This wasn't some stiff, formal business transaction in a boardroom. They were just hanging out. Clinton was storytelling.
That implies a level of personal rapport. You don't regale people you just see as, like, your transportation staff.
Exactly. You regale your peers or your audience. And Epstein is just there facilitating the whole thing. He's the guy who paid for the plane. Maybe he paid for the sandwiches. And he's just happy to be in that orbit.
In that moment, Epstein isn't the predator.
No, in that moment, he's the audience. He's the patron. And that dynamic is exactly what allowed him to hide in plain sight for so long.
Okay, so the Africa trip is confirmed. That is firmly in the fact column. But then we get into the nitty-gritty of the flight logs and the specific dates, because this is where a lot of the online theories go wild. There's an email in the files.
The really crucial one, yes.
Yeah.
It's a crucial document for clearing up the timeline and the nature of these flights. The email is a reply to someone asking questions about the logs. It says, and I'm quoting here, "Yep, the BA from the Africa trip with Epstein and President Clinton. Those August flights are after the press."
After the press. Let's just parse that for a second. It feels like a little throwaway line in an email, but you think this is actually a key to understanding the security environment on that plane.
It is. It's everything. It seems to be shorthand for after the presidency. The key context here is the date. These flights are in 2002, 2003. Bill Clinton left office in January 2001.
And why does that distinction matter so much?
Because of the Secret Service. The USSS. Even after a president leaves office, they have a Secret Service detail.
Right.
They are with him 24/7. They travel with him. They secure the plane before he ever gets on it. They are in the cabin with him.
Okay, let's drill down on this idea of the bubble, because I think most people, they imagine the Secret Service as just a guy in sunglasses standing by the door. But it's so much more than that, isn't it?
Oh, it's much, much more. It's a footprint. When Bill Clinton steps onto a private aircraft, even a Gulfstream or a Boeing 727 like Epstein's, the Secret Service has protocols. They sweep the aircraft beforehand. They check the cockpit. They check the manifest. They need to know who is on that plane.
So they're not just passengers. They're effectively taking control of that environment.
To a very large degree, yes. And here is the part that's crucial for all the trafficking theories. If you are Jeffrey Epstein and you are running an illicit operation that involves minors, are you doing that when there are federal agents with earpieces sitting 3 rows behind you?
I mean, criminals can be arrogant, but that seems operationally suicidal.
It's pretty much impossible. These agents are trained to observe. If a 14-year-old girl is brought on board, an agent doesn't just look the other way. They ask for ID. They log it. If something illegal happens right in front of them, they are sworn law enforcement officers. They have to act.
So if you're looking at these files and you're imagining some kind of wild, illicit party happening at 30,000 feet while Bill Clinton is on board?
You have to account for the fact that federal agents are sitting right there watching.
Precisely. And this is a point that gets lost in all the Clinton body count narratives we see in some of the other source materials. The presence of the Secret Service acts as this massive dampener on the possibility of any overt criminal activity during those specific flights.
Right. Epstein might have been trafficking girls on that plane the day before or the day after.
Yeah.
But when the president is on board, the entire environment changes.
It becomes a secure transport.
It becomes a secure transport. And that email, the one mentioning those August flights are after the press, it suggests that the people managing these records were very, very aware of exactly when Clinton was and was not on that plane. They were tracking it closely.
So effectively, Clinton was riding in a crime scene, but the crime wasn't happening while he was in the seat.
He was hitchhiking in a crime scene. Unknowingly.
Yeah.
Maybe. Willfully ignorant. That seems more likely. But yes, the physical space he was in was a tool of abuse for other people at other times.
Speaking of tracking, there's another really fascinating communication in the files about the money, the financial aspect of this. I think a lot of people just assume Epstein was, comping everything, showering Clinton with freebies to buy favor. But there's an email that suggests there was a dispute.
Yes, this is the one that reads, "The bet very clearly Clinton was traveling on our plane. Read the airports located on the flight logs. I expect the bill."
I expect the bill. That changes the tone quite a bit, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests that, for at least some legs of the journey, or maybe for some associated costs, there was an expectation of reimbursement.
Who do we think is writing this? Is this Epstein himself?
The language feels like it's from Epstein's side or someone managing his accounts. The phrasing is a bit ambiguous. I expect the bill could mean I expect to receive a bill from Clinton's team so I can pay it. But given the context of Clinton was traveling on our plane, it reads more like a demand.
More like, I provided a service, now where is the payment?
Or at least calculate the bill so we can send it over.
But why would Clinton pay? I mean, I thought the whole point of having billionaire friends was getting free rides on their jets.
Ethics rules. Even former politicians have to be incredibly careful about gifts. Paying for charter travel, even if it's at a discount, is a way to keep the books clean. If Clinton's team insisted on being billed to avoid any ethics violations, that would generate a paper trail.
But if Epstein's side is writing, I expect the bill, it sounds like maybe that paper trail wasn't being generated fast enough for their liking?
Or he was just annoyed.
Yeah.
It makes the whole relationship feel much more transactional, like, look, we did you a favor, now settle up. It kind of breaks that image of Epstein as this infinitely generous billionaire just handing out gifts. It shows he was keeping score.
I mean, people who keep score usually intend to cash in their chips at some point.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so we have the flights, we have the Africa trip, we have the Secret Service detail that makes the mile-high club trafficking theories pretty unlikely during those specific trips. But now we have to go to the big one.
The island.
The holy grail of the Clinton-Epstein rumors, Little St. James. The question that has fueled a million conspiracy theories. Did Bill Clinton ever set foot on Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
Well, if you listen to the sources from, the Underground Railroad radio or the war room clips we have in our stack for today, the answer is a resounding screaming yes. The narrative in that ecosystem is that he was a regular visitor, that he practically had his own villa there.
But we're not just looking at the narrative, we're looking at the files. What do the actual documents say?
For that, we have to turn to the deposition of Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, we have to start with a big caveat here. Ghislaine Maxwell is a convicted sex trafficker. She's co-conspirator. Her word is not gospel.
Of course.
However, this was testimony given under oath.
And perjury is a serious crime.
Exactly. So in this deposition, she is asked directly, point blank, about Clinton's presence on Little St. James. And her answer is explicit. She says, and I'm quoting the transcript here, Clint, the ex-president never came to the island.
She stumbles a bit on the name Clint, the ex-president, but that denial is categorical, never came to the island.
It is. And this is significant because in those same depositions, she's evasive about other things. She admits to some things. But on this specific point, she is direct and firm. And once more, within the flight logs that were released in this specific tranche of data, there are no entries showing Epstein's plane landings in St. Thomas or the Virgin Islands with Bill Clinton on the manifest.
So the flight logs we have actually match her testimony on this point.
In this specific data set, yes. They corroborate each other. He flies to Africa, he flies to Asia, he flies to Europe with Epstein. But that last little hop to the island, it's not in the papers we have.
Now, I want to bring up another document that I found absolutely fascinating. It's an internal note. It looks like it's from a lawyer or an investigator regarding a specific witness. The document refers to Mrs. Roberts, who we believe is Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and a story she told about a dinner.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The fabricated dinner.
Exactly. I'm looking at this note here. It's scribbled in the margin of a document. It says something about a dinner with the president. Am I reading that right?
You are. The text reads, Miss has detailed in minute detail her dinner with President Clinton. Ask her wholly fabricated Clinton dinner story.
Wholly fabricated. I mean, that is some seriously aggressive language for an internal note.
It is. This is most likely defense work product.
Yeah.
Their job is to find ways to destroy the credibility of the accusers. But look at the phrasing. They don't just say, we should deny this. They say, ask her wholly fabricated story. It implies they believe they have contradictory evidence.
Like what? What could they have?
Travel records, receipts, and most importantly, Secret Service logs. If Virginia Roberts says, I had dinner with Bill Clinton on the island on January 5th, and the defense team has a photo and logs of Bill Clinton giving a speech in Los Angeles on January 5th, they know they have her. They know they can prove she is lying, or at the very least mistaken, about that specific event.
So this note suggests that Epstein's legal team felt confident enough to write down in black and white, this is a lie, this did not happen.
And it reminds us that just because an allegation exists out there in the ether, it doesn't mean it holds up to scrutiny. For the listener, this is probably the hardest part of this whole deep dive. You have to be able to hold two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time. One, Bill Clinton associated with a known sex trafficker and flew all over the world on his private plane. That's a fact. 2. Specific salacious stories about dinners and island visits might be totally false.
It's the difference between a massive moral failure and being a direct criminal participant.
Precisely. The documents we have prove a massive moral failure and a catastrophic lapse in judgment. They do not, as of right now, prove he was a participant in the trafficking on the island itself.
And frankly, memory is a tricky thing. If you're a young girl being trafficked by this powerful man and you see another tall man with white hair and a suit 5 years later, your brain might fill in the blank with Clinton because he's the most famous tall man with white hair, you know.
Exactly. Or maybe she was told he was coming to the island and he never actually showed up, but the anticipation of it created a false memory. Or maybe he was a different powerful man. We just don't know. But we do know that the defense team was ready to call that specific story fabricated.
Okay, let's widen the aperture a bit. The connection wasn't just about planes and social trips. It was about organizations. It was about the foundation.
The Clinton Foundation, and later, the Clinton Global Initiative, or CGI. This was Bill Clinton's entire post-presidency lifeblood. He wanted to solve the world's biggest problems: AIDS, poverty, climate change. And to do that, you need money. You need massive amounts of money.
And Jeffrey Epstein, whatever else he was, had access to money. Or at least he projected that he did.
He projected immense wealth. And in that same Maxwell transcript, she discusses her and Epstein's association with the Clintons. And note the plural there. She says Clintons, meaning Bill and Hillary. And she specifically mentions their involvement in the startup of the Clinton Global Initiative.
The startup. That phrasing implies they were there on the ground floor.
It suggests that Epstein positioned himself as a founding partner or an early catalyst for the whole endeavor. And this really helps explain why the relationship existed in the first place. It wasn't just that Epstein was a fun guy to have a conversation with. It was that Epstein was useful. He could help launch this massive philanthropic project.
It's that cover we always talk about with Epstein. He collected famous scientists, he collected academics, and he collected presidents because it made him look legitimate. If you're helping start the Clinton Global Initiative, nobody's asking too many questions about why you have so many young girls around you. You're not a creep, you're a philanthropist.
It is the definition of reputation laundering. And for Clinton, it was likely just another donor, a big donor, an interesting donor maybe, but a donor. Politicians collect donors the way some people collect stamps. They don't always vet the source of the cash as thoroughly as they probably should.
There's also a mention in the files about Chelsea Clinton's wedding. This was a huge social event, and the questioning in the deposition tries to pin down whether Epstein was there.
And the documents make a really interesting distinction here. It appears that Ghislaine Maxwell did attend the wedding, but the files strongly suggest that Epstein himself did not.
That's a fascinating split. It's like Ghislaine was the social lubricant. She was the one who could walk into that high society ballroom and fit in.
Well, Maxwell was a true socialite. She was the daughter of Robert Maxwell, the infamous media tycoon. She grew up in that world. She spoke the language of the elite. She knew how to behave at a wedding. Epstein was a college dropout from Coney Island who got rich and acted like he owned the world. He was always a bit rougher around the edges, despite all his affectations.
And let's look at the timeline. The wedding was in 2010. By 2010, Epstein was already a registered sex offender. His first conviction was in 2008.
That's the key. So inviting Epstein himself would have been a public relations disaster. But inviting Ghislaine, in 2010, she was still seen as acceptable. She was still the charming friend of the family.
It just goes to show how long Ghislaine managed to maintain her social standing even after Jeffrey started to fall. She was the bridge builder.
She was the bridge builder, and Epstein was the toll collector.
Okay, now we have to talk about maybe the weirdest, most bizarre item in the entire Clinton file stack.
The painting.
The painting, the famous parsing bill image. When the authorities raided Epstein's Manhattan mansion, they found a painting. It depicts Bill Clinton posing in what looks like the Oval Office, but he's wearing a blue dress and red high heels.
It's an oil painting by an artist named Katrina Ryan Clyde. And it's just bizarre.
Bizarre is putting it mildly. It's deeply weird. But if we're looking at it from a psychological perspective, not a criminal one, why would you have a painting of your supposed friend, the former president, in drag?
And it's not just any dress. You have to look closely. It's clearly meant to evoke the blue dress from the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Oh, right. The blue dress, of course.
The connection is unmistakable. Is Epstein basically saying, I know about your biggest public humiliation?
And he hung this in a prominent place in his home.
In the townhouse, yes. Visitors saw it. Can you imagine walking into a billionaire's house for a meeting and seeing a painting of the former president of the United States in a dress and heels?
It's a power move. It's a way of saying, I can get away with this.
It speaks volumes about the power dynamic that Epstein believed he held. He didn't respect these powerful people. He collected them, and then he mocked them. Hanging that painting in his home was a flex. It was a way of saying, I own this guy. I can make fun of him. I know his secrets.
It's so subversive. It's not a portrait of honor. It's a portrait of humiliation.
That's it, exactly. It suggests that behind all the smiles and the trips to Africa, Epstein viewed Clinton with a certain level of contempt, or at least saw him as a plaything. It reinforces the idea that Epstein was a predator in every sense of the word. He preyed on the vulnerable for sex, and preyed on the powerful for status and his own amusement.
It really paints a profile of Epstein as a narcissist of the absolute highest order.
A malignant narcissist. He had this need to devalue the very people he envied. He envied Clinton's legitimate earned power, so he had to find a way to mock it, to bring it down to his level.
Okay, let's pivot now to the fallout. Because you really can't talk about Clinton and Epstein without talking about the absolute firestorm of media coverage and conspiracy theories that surrounds them. We have a whole stack of audio sources here. Underground Railroad Radio, War Room, Buck Sexton.
The narrative war.
It really is a war. And looking at these clips from 2016, 2017, leading up to the 2020 election, the intensity is just off the charts. The name Epstein becomes a political weapon.
And specifically, a weapon to be used against the Clintons. You see, the facts that we've just discussed, the flights, the foundation connection, they provided a grain of truth. And around that single grain of truth, a pearl of absolute insanity was formed.
We have sources in our stack discussing the Clinton body count, this long-standing theory that anyone who crosses the Clintons ends up dead.
Right. And then Epstein's death, his suicide in prison, poured gasoline on that fire. We have podcast episodes explicitly titled, Jeffrey Epstein Did Not Kill Himself. We have clips discussing what vanished with Epstein and revisiting the whole body count idea.
The implication, of course, being that Clinton had him killed to keep him quiet.
That is the core allegation you hear in the conspiracy sphere. But again, if we're sticking to the files, the justice documents, the internal emails, there is zero evidence of a hit. There is zero evidence of outside involvement in his death to be found in these specific documents.
What the files do show is gross negligence. Guards were sleeping, cameras were broken.
Which is its own massive scandal. But it's a scandal of incompetence, not necessarily a conspiracy of assassination.
Okay.
At least not based on these documents. But the perception is incredibly powerful.
And then there's Pizzagate. We have a source here at the headline. Hashtag Pizzagate bombshell Clinton connection to Laura Silsby.
Right. And this is where multiple unrelated theories get conflated into one giant super conspiracy. Laura Silsby was involved in a controversy about taking children out of Haiti after the earthquake. The conspiracy theorists link Silsby to the Clintons, because the Clintons were involved in the diplomatic efforts in Haiti. Then they link the Clintons to Epstein. And then they link Epstein to a non-existent basement in a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C.
It's like a game of 6 degrees of separation, but for horrifying crimes.
It is. And it's important to analyze why this kind of narrative works. It works because the documented reality, Bill Clinton flying around the world with a sex trafficker, is already so bad, so compromising, that the leap to he's running a satanic ring out of a pizza shop feels shorter to people who are already deeply suspicious of the establishment.
We also have the Clinton cash angle. Peter Schweitzer is mentioned in the Mark Larson show clips.
And this is the more grounded political critique. The Clinton cash book wasn't about satanic rituals. It was about funny money. It was about foreign governments and shady figures like Epstein donating to the Clinton Foundation as a way to buy influence.
And the source mentions the FBI was investigating the foundation for pay-to-play schemes.
Correct. And that is where the Epstein connection actually hurt the Clintons politically in a tangible way. It reinforced the narrative that the Clintons were corrupt, that they would take money from absolutely anyone, that they were lawless, to quote one of the Buck Sexton clips.
So on one side, you have this he's a demon involved in child sacrifice narrative. And on the other, you have that he is a corrupt politician selling access narrative. And Epstein's story feeds both of them.
He is the universal villain. If you want to prove Clinton is corrupt, you point to Epstein. If you want to prove the entire system is rigged and evil, you point to Epstein. He works for every theory.
There's a clip from the Michael Brooks show that argues Hillary Clinton is still wrong about why she lost Wisconsin in 2016. But you can make the case that the specter of these scandals, even the ones that weren't fully public yet, created this deep aura of mistrust that was impossible to shake.
Absolutely. The Epstein Files that were released years later just confirmed what many voters already felt in their gut back in 2016, that the elites were all playing by a different set of rules.
So let's bring this all home. Let's synthesize. We've looked at the logs, the depositions, the internal emails, the media fallout. What is the final verdict of the files? What is proven?
Okay, let's do the documented column first. 1. Flights to Africa are documented. The manifests list Clinton, Spacey, Tucker, Epstein. That's a fact.
2. The humanitarian nature of that trip. Documented. They visited projects. They went to that deli. It was a PR tour.
3. Flights in August of 2002 and 2003, documented. These happened after he was president.
4. Interactions with Ghislaine Maxwell. That's documented. She was at Chelsea's wedding. She was clearly in the inner circle.
And 5. Epstein's involvement in the early days of the Clinton Global Initiative. That's documented through Maxwell's own testimony.
Okay, now for the other column, what's in the disputed or maybe even debunked column?
1. And this is the big one. Visits to Little St. James. That is disputed. Maxwell denies it under oath. And crucially, the flight logs in this specific dataset do not show any landings there with him on board.
2. The secret dinner with Virginia Roberts. Disputed. The internal defense documents call that story wholly fabricated.
And 3. Any direct involvement in Epstein's trafficking operation. This is heavily alleged by the public discourse, but is not documented in these specific files. No charges, no direct evidence.
So what does this all mean? What's the big so what here?
The so what is that Bill Clinton, a man of immense intelligence and political skill, allowed himself to be courted, used, and ultimately tarnished by a predator.
Used feels like the key word there.
I think it is. Epstein was a collector of power. He collected Clinton to launder his own reputation. He stood next to the former president so that when people looked at him, they didn't see a monster, they saw a friend of Bill.
And what was in it for Clinton?
For Clinton, it reveals a catastrophic failure of vetting, a massive failure of judgment, and maybe a little bit of arrogance. The belief that he could associate with anyone, go anywhere, and his own charisma, his own power, would insulate him from the consequences.
He thought he could regale the group at the deli and just walk away clean.
But you don't walk away clean from Jeffrey Epstein. The ink on those flight logs is permanent. And while the criminal allegations against Clinton regarding the island remain unproven in these documents, the moral indictment of the association is right there in black and white for everyone to see.
It's a stain that just doesn't wash out.
No, it really doesn't.
So today we established the reality of the Africa trip, the internal doubts about specific witness stories, and Maxwell's sworn denial of Clinton's presence on the island.
Next time, another name, Donald Trump. Mar-a-Lago. The quote about liking them young. What's documented?
That's next time on the Epstein Files.
You have just heard an analysis of the official record. Every claim, name, and date mentioned in this episode is backed by primary source documents. You can view the original files for yourself at epsteinfiles.fm. If you value this data-first approach to journalism, please leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. It helps keep this investigation visible. We'll see you in the next file.